Who were the Philistines?
When you read the biblical text, it's very clear that the Philistines are related to as one of the main enemies of the Israelites and the Judites.
You're talking about a period when empires are sticking their noses in the business going on here.
And then there comes a certain point when the Israelites need to go and face the Philistines, their enemies, in a battle. They become really scared and they ask for the ark to be brought to the battlefield in order to help them win the battle against the Philistines.
The Israelites were not supposed to do this.
The ark is lost, and it's this horrible event, this disaster.
So this is a very powerful moment for the Philistines. They really need to consider what might be the ramifications of messing with Israel's God.
Yeah. Well, if that doesn't get you excited for this interview, I don't know what will. Because I don't know, watching that earlier, I felt like I was ready to go play a basketball game or something. I'm like, let's go, Philistines. Let's figure it out. But before we even get started, we'll get to the video and just what's all behind that. But let's give a warm ABF welcome to Dr. Chris McKinny here.
Thank you, thank you.
Yeah. And first off, I want to start just by saying thank you for being here this weekend. This is just so great to have you in here, just using your giftings and your knowledge of the land of the Bible and being able to teach all of us here at CBC. So thanks for being here. Heard great things about the class, heard great things about Lord of the Rings, which I didn't understand how that connected with the class, but somehow people said it did, and it's been awesome. So, well, from your perspective, how's it been?
You know, it's been really great. Thank you so much for having me, of course, but being so attentive and asking great questions. I'm always in the land, except for these COVID years, and I always get to experience such wonderful trips and being in these places that we've been talking about. And it's no chore to get into the world of the Bible. It's a world that, in some cases, as we'll see, I try and live and breathe through excavations, but also just experience again and again. And as I've said in class, it can be addictive, so be careful. As can Lord of the Rings, but it's been a great joy, and I look forward to our last session today.
Awesome. Yeah, we got one more session this afternoon. But it's just been a great weekend that I've heard about. So I got a few questions that I want to start off with, and one of them is I was born and raised in Texas. I feel like I know Texas pretty well. And when I saw where you were from, I'm like, oh, cool, this guy's from Portland, Oregon, Pacific Northwest. And then I saw it said Texas on there, and I'm like, that's a typo. That place doesn't exist, but it does. And you were from Portland, Texas. So can you explain where that is and how to get there if I just want to drive there?
Sure. And I think this has come up a couple times. Texas is a big place, actually slightly bigger than California, but we don't really like to talk about that too much. I'm not one, Texas first type thing, although many Texans are. Portland is close to Corpus Christi, which is I think it's the 5th largest city in Texas and a large port.
Not Portland.
Not
Corpus
Portland.
Christi.
Portland is right beside Corpus Christi. It's right on the Gulf Coast, about 2 hours drive from the border with Mexico, and that's really where I grew up. Actually, on a farm. I grew up, out in the country, and my granddad was a pastor, but also a farmer. He was a pastor farmer. Had kind of double role, and so I grew up spending all my time in the tractor every summer, playing basketball during my high school years, and then went out to Master's College for my undergrad.
Got it. Oh, well, Portland, Texas. Now you know. So if somebody asks you where Portland, Texas is, you can say, I know somebody there. And there's some cool things in Portland, Texas. So, but then there's another connection there, and you're connected with Pastor Mark. You and Pastor Mark go back, right?
We do go back all the way back to 2004 when we both came in as 18 and 19-year-olds to the Master's College. Now it's known as the Master's University. We were in Slight Dorm, which is one that has 6 people jammed into this room. And it was me, Mark, and another freshman coming in with these 3 older students who liked computers and were, well, it was very much a breakdown between these different demographics. And so we bonded almost immediately. He had the top bunk, I had the lower bunk. And we just had a great time rooming together, and we've been good friends ever since then. Been in each other's weddings, and been on the same Frisbee golf team that we invented, including the course. So and it's been great to see not only our relationship continue, but also to see where we both started and have Mark develop into such this cool institute and at this church, and it's been great to follow from a distance. I've been following on Facebook to see, how the buildings are coming together in the library, and it's just it's wonderful to see the Lord work in a good friend and see the progress here.
Awesome. Well, and if you didn't hear, they invented a Frisbee golf team. That Pastor Mark invented a Frisbee golf team. So I asked him about that. But you're roommates with Pastor Mark. Tell us something we wouldn't know about Pastor Mark.
Well, he may have told you this before, but one thing that is definitely for sure is his vehicle, which had a particular name that may not be worth. I mean, it's nothing profane, but it was a small Toyota. And it was dark brown, and it barely ran, and it went by that name. And we drove in and out all the time to 7-Eleven on late night runs, and that in particular was a great experience. But I think the main thing was, the Frisbee golf team and all the great times we had doing that and hanging out with a bunch of other friends.
Awesome. Well, Frisbee golf team, I'd love to learn more about that one day when we have more time. But there you go. Pastor Mark drove a brown Toyota. You remember that car? I do. I hold out hope that it remains driving around Guatemala City. And that's the last you saw of it. And it was gone. So it could be floating around. So if you see a brown Toyota, that could be Pastor Mark's old car. So anyway, well, we got Dr. Chris McKinney here. And one thing we love to do just when we have people here is, again, go back to the foundation and understand just your relationship with Christ and how it started. So we'd love to hear your testimony, Dr. McKinney, and we'll start from there.
Sure. Yeah. As I said, I grew up in South Texas. I'm the oldest of 3, and I was born when my parents were very young. So my mom and dad were like 20; they'd just been married, and I grew up and knew them obviously quite well. But I also almost had like a second set of parents with my maternal grandparents, and particularly my granddad, who was in his early to mid 40s at the time. And I mentioned him earlier as a farmer, but also as a pastor, and he became a believer at the age of 30. He had gone to a Methodist church for a number of years, and his parents had helped kind of found this church, and it was very much kind of like token Southern Christianity, and wasn't really life transformative. And he, again, was really met by the weight of his sin and felt strongly that he was being called to Christ. And, that's about a decade or so before I was born. And in that decade, he was discipled by a number of men, but one in particular from College Station, who was connected with the Grace to You ministry of John MacArthur. and over that decade, really felt called to teach and start a church. And so when I talk about my testimony, and I think, it's always difficult when you grow up in the church, which is the ideal, I think. I mean, to have your children and your children's children grow up in the faith. It's you don't necessarily have the wow testimony story, but I actually think it's also quite fun and cool to think about that that foundation of faith that was started with him. And so, I mean, I remember as a young child, being in his living room, which was our church at the time, before we had a church building, and just being met with the gospel and wanting to bow the knee to the Savior and doing that and being baptized. And so when I see the great transformation of his life, I see that as the providence that led me to the position I'm in now, and of course the position of faith, but not just that in terms of salvation, which is of course the most important thing, but I also have just an enormously great relationship with him, and he's still alive, and he's still in the pulpit at 81, and he's just got this, I think, amazing testimony of life. He's not only been faithful there for many years, but his wife for the last 15, 20 years has had very difficult health conditions, and he's been faithful and true all these years. And so he's my hero, but I would go in the summers, ride the tractor, drive the tractor, get in there with him in the combine, as we're going through the grain sorghum fields or the cotton fields, doing the picking of the cotton, and he'd tell me all these war stories. He grew up, he went to Texas A&M College Station, was in the Corps, and so he's an artilleryman. And so I'd hear about, all the things that happened at College Station, and, General Douglas MacArthur, and how Truman should have let him go after China. And I learned so much just about the World War II history and the environment that he grew up and knew as a child. And it just really lit a spark in me to be interested in history. And at the time, he and my parents were very much, my dad, were reading a lot of historical fiction novels about the founding of the State of Israel. This is my, early teens, 11, 12 years old. And so I just devoured these books about World War II history and the founding of the State of Israel. And then they had been going to Israel on a couple of different trips, my granddad and my grandparents. And so they wanted to take me. And so I went on a kind of a crummy church tour. I mean, where most of the stuff they said was, take it with a grain of salt. They pointed to the Western Wall and they said, this is Solomon's temple. And I found out later it has nothing to do with Solomon. But it was really impactful to connect the practical knowledge of the history of this land, the land of Israel, and then to see it and to see like the excitement of a place where not only do you have the history of the past, the history of the Bible, the preceding history, but living in the history then and now. This was 1999, so I was able to go into the Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque. I remember seeing the bullet hole where the previous king of Jordan had been assassinated, and right after that was when the Second Intifada started, and so still until today, you can't go into these places. So it just had such a big impact on me. And when I came home, even though I probably misspelled biblical archaeology as a freshman, I wrote, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" I wrote biblical archaeologist, and this was something that from a very early age I wanted to pursue, and it's why I ended up going to the Master's College, which is now called the Master's University, because of their IBEX program, the Israel Bible Extension, which is where I did go. And my, I think, sophomore year, I left Mark, and I tried to get him to go. But what can I do? He didn't join me there. But I went, and we just had a great experience, great professor who I remain friends with, saw all the land, and this became like a fantastic foundational knowledge to move forward with, and it just continued to coalesce from there. I mean, when you talk about going and being invested in the land and And so I decided afterwards that as soon as I graduated from master's, I wanted to pursue a graduate degree in Jerusalem, and I did at Jerusalem University College, which is not quite in the old city, but just outside the gate. I mean, you could probably throw a football and hit the wall from there. And I spent a couple of years there at Jerusalem University College, working on a degree in biblical history and geography, touring all the land once more, and working on some graduate work. And then I experienced, for the first time, a full-scale excavation some 13 years ago at Tel Asafi Gath. That is Gath of the Philistines, hometown of Achish, king of Gath, probably know better, Goliath, Goliath of the Philistines. And this was just a premier excavation project run by fantastic Israeli scholars. And just the experience of going and being at a site and not just having someone else tell you about it, but digging in and well, I always say archaeologists are sadistic. They love other people's destruction because the destruction gives us a lot of data, like a lot of information. We want them to have been killed and not have had time to take away their stuff and then the roof to fall on them. Because if so, that means we have all of the goodies. And luckily for us, not them, at Gath of the Philistines, we have this in abundance. There was a destruction there in around the year 830 BC, which is mentioned in the Bible, 2 Kings 12:17, where this Aramean king, Hazael of Aram, Damascus, came and destroyed the site of Gath of the Philistines, and he destroyed it completely. It was the biggest site in the entire region, and he burned it to the ground. And so that first experience of digging in destruction, ash hitting you in the nostrils that is from, 3,000 years ago, and digging up, these beautiful Philistine chalices, and just all of the camaraderie of being involved with that team. It was just an unforgettable experience. And so adding that to the desire to know the land from a larger geographical and historical perspective, but getting into the details of the people, whether we're talking about Philistines or Canaanites or Israelites or otherites, it gives you just a reality. And so that was a big thing. I talked to the director. His name is Aaron Mayer. You saw him a few minutes ago. He was the guy in the peach shirt at the beginning. And I started to do my PhD at Bar Ilan University in Israel. Worked on a number of different things, but my dissertation dealt with what most people consider to be the crispy, boring section of the Bible, Joshua chapter 15, which is a list of some 120 towns, and dealt with the geography, the site identification, and archaeology. And call me crazy, but I still really think it's an interesting topic and fun, and did that.
Let me just ask you on that, because I don't want to blow past that, but in our DBR, so we're in the book of Joshua, and today we read Joshua 19 and 20. I taught on that, and just looking at chapters 13 through 22, it's like, just brace yourself. There's a lot of names that's coming. What advice would you give somebody that's looking at that and you're passionate about it, to your average reader would read chapters 13 through 22 and say, okay, how soon do I get past this and get to the last words of Joshua? But seriously though, how would you tell somebody, hey, look at this or pay attention to this, that would I don't want to use the word bring more excitement, but engage them more as they read through this list of cities?
Yeah, it's such a good question. I would say that the boring sections of the Bible tend to be the most important for understanding the reality of the Bible. In other words, when we're talking even about law or legal code, or in this case, these lists of cities, it's describing a reality that they knew. And the thing I would say about this in particular is the Bible is, of course, a wonderful book, but it lacks graphics, right? They didn't have a cartographer with them. So that is a map. Like when you read Joshua 13 through 22, it is a map of places. And that would have been relevant to the biblical reader and to the biblical audience. And so that's how you should, I think, approach it, and understanding it as a map. And so luckily, we have maps. We have maps, and we have good maps that exist. And so I would say the best way to really approach it is to have a good map with you, and then as you're reading through, place those locations, look at the map, and go back and forth and try and get a sense of what they look like. Another thing that is quite useful, and for those of you that are taking the course, we've built a kind of a curriculum / resource called the Photo Companion to the Bible, where for this particular book, I did most of the work on it, where we've got maps and photos of virtually every place that's mentioned between Joshua 13 and 22, and a discussion on why we know or don't know where each one of these places are. And so just in terms of I think the reality behind the scenes, it's really important. Now, unfortunately, we don't have as many stories in the Bible to connect with all these things, but sometimes these places are very significant, and they show up in the biblical text. Sometimes they don't appear in a story, but when you know where they are, you can really help. It really helps you understand what's going on. For instance, in Judges chapter 4 and 5, in the story of Deborah and Barak, we have a mountain Tabor that's mentioned, and it kind of briefly mentions Megiddo. But once you know that this is in the Jezreel Valley, and it's just actually absolutely jam-packed with important ancient cities, it helps you understand what it would have meant for Sisera, kind of the lieutenant of Jabin, king of Hatzor, to control this vital area. And so even though they're not mentioned directly in that passage, it gives you kind of a roster and a reality of places that kind of lie behind the scenes. And then if you can go as deep as you want, because you can go into excavations and surveys. And so it's kind of like a reader beware, because it's kind of, there's a lot to it, but it just provides that background that's, there's a reality to it that we talked about Middle Earth earlier. It's realia, not fantasy. And it's as deep as you want to go in some of these questions.
That's excellent. And you mentioned excavation projects. Just when we hear that, give us a quick 30, 60-second just summary of what that means, what's happening there. Kind of put us in the shoes of somebody that's on an excavation project.
Yeah. So an excavation is, in most simple terms, is a project that is aimed at answering specific goals about an archaeological site, answering specific questions. And so when an academic institution, a scholar, wants to approach a site, they're coming to it with XYZ questions. So the site that I excavate, Tel Borna, it's a site that is occupied in the Bronze Age and in the Iron Age. And so when you would go to that site, we're really interested in knowing about these periods, but also knowing about where it is, because it's on the border between Gath of the Philistines and the kingdom of Judah. And so our question would be, what is a border site like? And then the way we attack it is with those questions. We are going to want to go to particular places on the site and try and see if the material we can find can help us understand borders. Do the pots that we find, do they tell us who was living there or not? Was the site fortified? And in terms of actually doing it, you get up early, like 4:30 or 5 in the morning. The reason why that is because it's very, very hot in June and July in the region. You get you get in the bus or in the vehicles, you climb up to the top and see the rising sun, and then you work from about 6 a.m. to about 12:30 or so in excavation squares, 4 yards or 4 meters by 4 meters, and you record everything. And then you come back after that hard work, eat some lunch, and then you sit down to pottery washing, washing broken dishes that are not complete, and talking with people from all over the world. It's, of course, at this place that you solve all the world's problems. You're hot and tired, but you're enjoying this experience of talking with someone from maybe the other part of the world about what you've been finding, politics, religion, all the stuff we're not really supposed to get into with strangers, and that's why I kind of consider it to be like summer camp for adults. It's just a great experience, and you become so close to all these people because you're working so hard together with this common goal. And so I would say it's important academically, but it's also just a really rewarding experience.
That's awesome. And so we got a little clip of the video, but you're working on a documentary right now. Yeah, walk us through that and talk to us about what's the purpose behind it, what you're looking to accomplish, and what we can expect if we were to take a look at this documentary.
Yes. So the documentary is, well, I work for a company called Gesher Media. Gesher Media in Hebrew, or Gesher, means bridge. And the goal of Gesher is to be a bridge between biblical archaeology, geography, backgrounds, in terms of the academy and the lay audience. I found over the years that Christian media kind of falls in one of two categories. It can either be completely dismissive of the historicity of the Bible, and that's kind of like the aim of it, or it can be so accepting of really outlandish claims, and the whole point is to make Christians feel good about their historical background, where from my perspective, I believe the Bible is true and has facts and has reality to it, but many times we focus on that to the detriment of, this is a really good story. The authors really knew what they were doing and how they were telling the story, and these moments where you're meant to not just say, did that happen or not, but say, wow, that's amazing, and part of that story that we've chosen to show has to do with the Ark and the Tabernacle. And so in the documentary film that we're going to be filming here in the next couple of months in Israel, with Kevin Sorbo, who's one of our main actors. If you know Hercules, the legend continues. He's our main actor, but we also have Craig Evans, a very well-known New Testament scholar that's involved with it. And so we're going to be working on producing a feature-length film, which will be premiered in a kind of Fathom Events style. But since we've had so many problems with COVID, and this company literally started right as COVID was coming in, we've had a lot of setbacks. So we've decided to also develop a documentary series beside it. And I actually am really even more excited about this series that was the trailer that I showed you in a minute, where we can actually spend even more time on some of these questions like, who were the Philistines? What would it mean for the Ark? And you see perhaps a depiction of what that would have looked like here. And we can also get into questions like this, where does the Ark of the Covenant and the Tabernacle, do they have a cultural background, right? They're coming out of Egypt. They're coming out of bondage. What would the Ark of the Covenant look like? Was Steven Spielberg right? When they make it in Indiana Jones, is that the one in the model that we should be using, or is there other things that look a lot like the types of objects that are from Egypt from the same time period, which would be from about 1500 to 1200 BC, and it turns out that there are a lot of these types of objects that are covered in gold, made from acacia wood, with poles attached to them, with winged figures around them. And so this is one area that we're going to be exploring in the film. And I think it gets to a really interesting question. We always say that the Bible is a divine book. It's divinely inspired, but it also has a human agent. Does God create culture that can then be plugged into the text, or is the culture of the Bible in archaeology and history and geography, is that being brought in a way that is that that would be revealed to the Israelites? Would they use what they have in the environment they have to create these types of objects? And I think the answer almost has to be yes, but it's probably something most people haven't thought about. And I think a similar parallel can be made with language. You know, the Bible isn't written in angelic language. It's written Hebrew and Aramaic and Greek, all of which have these cultural backgrounds. And so I just think it's it's been very exciting to be involved with it as we try and bridge the gap between what's existing in the academy and people that are interested in these topics that just don't have great resources to do it.
That's awesome. And so what is the ETA on the documentary as far as the completion of it?
Yeah, so the documentary series, we're done, well, mostly done with the pilot. We lack a couple of CGI elements. We want to have a nice kind of map that we're moving through, and we're working with a great team who's working on this 3D and CGI, and even perhaps in the trailer you saw some of that CGI. Of course, the Ark and the Temple of Dagon, where the Ark is brought into. We've used real archaeological temples from the Philistines. We don't know what Dagon looked like. If you remember in the story, Dagon the house of Dagon is where the Ark is brought into, and that's where the Philistines put it there in a place called Ashdod. And the Ark is there, and one day Dagon is found lying before him, and they're like, well, okay, what happened here? Maybe he just fell over, and they put him back. And the next day, he's found with his head chopped off and his hands cut. But what did Dagon look like? And so we addressed that question, who is Dagon? What's that backstory? And so that element, those CGI elements, mostly are completed, but we have a few more. For those in the class, we're going to send out a video, kind of a premiere viewing of this episode. And so it's kind of as they are finished, we're releasing them, and we're still working on where they will appear. For sure, they're going to be available through our website, guessyourmedia.com. But we would love for History Channel, Discovery, Netflix, Angel Studios, somebody to pick this up, but we're still kind of working on those things. As far as the movie, the goal is most likely early 2023.
Okay, excellent. We'll be praying for that for sure. And I mean, just even hearing that about Dagon, you can already see the depth that you can go to with this and really get lost in it, depending on what you are researching. But you're working on a project right now. Right, and so talk to us a little bit about the project that you're working on, the work that you're doing now.
Right. So in terms of the excavation I work on, you can see the site above me, the Tel Burna Archaeological Project. We talked a bit about how life would be on the excavation, but maybe we can also spend just a little bit of time talking about what we found and how it relates to the Bible. Not every site in the land of the Bible has a name that we can find in the Bible. This one in particular, though, is probably the site of biblical Libnah. Now, you may remember this if you've read through the Bible in a year. You may have gone right past that and said, I just read that and moved on. But it's mentioned a number of times in connection with Joshua's conquest. Libnah is mentioned. It's also mentioned in connection with Hezekiah, one of the greatest kings of Judah. And this is, I think, perhaps the one I want to focus in on the most. Hezekiah was at a moment in Judah's history when the northern kingdom had fallen. He's writing at precisely the same time as two main prophets, Micah and, most importantly, Isaiah. And he has all of these interactions with Isaiah. And Sennacherib, to really understand how big of a threat Sennacherib was to Hezekiah, we need to understand that Assyria was by far and away the biggest, baddest, and most impressive empire in history till that point, until we really get to the Roman Empire. And for Hezekiah, really a fairly insignificant king in the wider scope of things, to essentially raise his fist and say, Sennacherib, you can't come get us. And that's what he does. And Sennacherib did come, and he destroyed 46 cities, he even says that, and totally laid waste to the kingdom of Judah and all of Hezekiah's allies, and bragged about it. As Jerusalem was kind of hanging on the vine there, he sent his 3 officials. You can read about this in 2 Kings chapter 18 or Isaiah chapter 36 and 37. And they send him to Jerusalem, and they have essentially a trash-talking session between the Assyrian officials and the Judahite officials. And the Judahite officials even say, don't speak Hebrew. Speak to us in another language of diplomacy. We don't want the people of Jerusalem to hear. And they have this long discussion, and at the end of it, Hezekiah doesn't know what to do. He goes inside the temple. He lays out his prayer before the Lord, asking him to save him, asking him to save Judah. Well, how does this connect with our site? Well, when that official, what's called the Rabshakeh, the cupbearer, had left Sennacherib, he had been fighting this great battle at Lachish. He had then moved to our site, the site of Tel Bornah, and he was besieging the city. And so when the Rabshakeh comes back to tell him Hezekiah is not yielding to your demands, he comes back to this site. And so we actually have the backstory to how our site would have fallen in the year 701 BC. And even in this last summer, we found evidence of that destruction, including even a young child skeleton and a number of other artifacts that relate to this destruction. And one thing that we're actually exploring is, where did Sennacherib leave off his destruction of Judah? Because as we know in the story, if you remember, it said that an angel of death, or really a destroyer, much like what you have in the story of Passover, comes to the camp of Sennacherib and kills either 180 units or 180,000 people, probably the former, and then he leaves and goes home. And even in Sennacherib's own annals, he says, I made Hezekiah like a bird in a cage in Jerusalem. So he doesn't actually take the city. And so it's just this great story, because it's not often in the Bible that we actually have even one source. Here we have the biblical source from 3 different texts, Kings, Chronicles, and Isaiah, and we get the Assyrian perspective, and we have it just across the board in these different sites where we have destruction layers. And so we can really reconstruct much of this campaign. And so that's one of the layers out of 6 or 7 that we have at the site. But it shows you how we're adding to the puzzle of trying to reconstruct the biblical landscape of what was happening between these destructions, what was happening at a site like Libnah, before Sennacherib is there, what's happening afterwards, because Josiah's wife, remember Josiah? Another great king, she's from Libnah, Hamutal. She's from, so, of course that means whenever we excavate something from this period, this is Hamutal's pot, this is Hamutal's house. And so it's, again, we're not talking about like reading the Bible and then just imagining it's not a reality. We're seeing it with our hands, and we're seeing the artifacts and the walls and the buildings and the landscapes of this. And I'll stop here, but I excavated the gate, which if you look on this image, it's kind of on the upper side, and it's from the 8th century. And I remember excavating it, and then you're in the hard work of recording everything, and you're sweaty and you're dirty, and then you walk up to the tower and you're like, wow, I mean, I'm looking out at this valley. The defenders of the kingdom of Judah were looking out at the same landscape, and they saw the Assyrian soldiers coming. And it's just, it's a connection with the past that's not just, reading the Bible for the Bible, but it's putting you into that world. And I think that's something that I'm always very much interested in recovering that landscape. And that's what makes archaeology so fun, because you can constantly come back and add more. Something new every year is uncovered that helps reveal that world.
That's awesome. And how many people are typically on the excavation project?
Yeah, good question. So it depends year to year. We have a relationship with Lipscomb University, which used to be at the Southwestern Baptist. And so they usually bring some 10, 15 students. We have about 15 or 20, anywhere from 1 week to the next. It differs a little bit, but sometimes it's 20 with as much as 50. And I'd say, if you'd like to come and excavate, you are more than welcome. We take any and all ages, no expertise required. It's a lot of fun to participate. So about 20 or so to 50. That's on a weekly basis.
Awesome. And you're also on a podcast that you help co-host, and I got a chance to listen a little bit of that, and it was the one on Sodom and Gomorrah, and so that was very interesting just to be able to get, again, that geography and just the depths of what happened with Sodom and Gomorrah. Is all of that, do we find the remainings today and all of that stuff? So speak about the podcast a little bit for us.
Yeah, I for a number of years, I've wanted to be involved in education in the public sphere. I think that the world of academics is fun. It's nice. It's nice to go to conferences and be in ivory towers and talk about various things that only academics are talking about. But I've just found that there's a world of people that are really interested in the types of things that I'm interested in, that they're just not always 18 to 20 years old in a college. And so that's why I've long been interested in developing a podcast. And so as Gesher was kind of starting, some of the interviewees that we talked with had already started an on-script podcast, which is about biblical theology. It's a great podcast, but it wasn't exactly my area of discussion. It's more like general Bible. And he approached me about, this is Matt Lynch of OnScript, and he approached me about starting this biblical world with a team of scholars. And so what we essentially do is we sit down and we talk about specific topics related to the biblical world. I have a number of great co-hosts, good friends, and one of the topics that you mentioned has to do with Sodom and Gomorrah. In fact, I've only just done part 1. I need to do part 2. But what we try to also address is new things that are happening in the world of archaeology. I mean, it's almost on a weekly basis that you have new discoveries being announced. Many of them can be quite sensationalized, and it's virtually impossible for the public who means well and wants to know if this is a legitimate discovery, what's the bias behind people who are arguing for or against this particular find. So in the case of Sodom and Gomorrah, obviously this is a big story. I mean, this is a big part of the book of Genesis, and there was a publication in one of the most prestigious journals out there, Nature, that talked about its destruction, the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, by means of a meteorite blast. But the big problem was that the place that they say Sodom was located cannot be the place. And so in our discussion of this, we showed from a geographical and a biblical perspective where where the location of Sodom and Gomorrah should be. And I strongly believe that it's beneath the Dead Sea. In fact, we have the Bible saying this. It says, the valley of Siddim, where Sodom and Gomorrah and the cities of the plain are located, is the Dead Sea. And so, for instance, in this part 1 of probably 2 or 3 episodes, we deal with the historical, geographical, and archaeological evidence of where Sodom and Gomorrah might be and where it can't be. Of course, in this case, if it's beneath sedimentary layers, we have the great benefit that we can actually never know what's under there because it's underneath the Dead Sea. But that's the kind of topic that we discuss on the podcast. We try to do current events and do different series. We've done 2 series that I think are really interesting. If you want to start listening, I would start with these. We did a Christmas series, a 2-part series on the archaeology of Christmas. We started the podcast off by doing the archaeology of Easter, looking at the sights and sounds of the archaeology of Jerusalem related to Passion Week. And so here and there, we also have guests. So if we have new publications that we want to disseminate these good books and good research to the public, we sit down actually with the author and talk about it. So all told, it's just been a really fun and good experience. And we hope our listeners also enjoy it.
Good. Well, yeah, certainly a great podcast. And again, I think it gets us from the average Bible reader to start to think about things a little differently. When we look at geography and we look at special places that are listed in the Bible, to start to make those connections to where they are in other places of the Bible as well. And so thanks for your work on that. I know that's not an easy task to do, but definitely fruitful for all of us to listen to. As we get ready to wrap up, I'd love to have you share a little bit about your family, because Mindy and the kids are out here as well. But introduce your family to us and just let us know a little bit about them and whatever you want to share about them.
Yeah, sure. My family is great. I really enjoy them.
That's a good start.
My wife, Mindy, and I, we grew up together. We've known each other since first grade. Didn't start dating then. We waited all the way till we were 15. We started dating in high school. We went to a very small private Christian school that was in a church that was very charismatic, and the curriculum was like super conservative, independent Baptist. So it was an interesting mix. But we started dating again like when we were 15 or so. We waited until between our freshman and sophomore year to get married, which is actually when Mark came out to Portland. And I'll never forget him coming out there. We were in the car, and Portland and they're extremely flat. All it is fields. And so very different environment than Orange County or really anywhere in the areas of California that I've been in. And so it was fun. I just remember him I sang to them, "That's my house way over there, that light," just kind of on the horizon, and he couldn't believe that actually would be it, because it was just dark, and so it was a good experience there. So we got married when we were 20. So my wife Mindy has been a part of this since the beginning. She's very supportive, best friend, good partners in all of this. We had our first child, Sam, who's now 10, when we were in our mid-20s and kind of between Israel trips and degrees, and then brought him there with us and lived in Israel for several years. He as a youngster was involved in some of the excavations. We've since then added two more. Simon, who is 6, who's been to Israel as a really young child, and Mary, who was my wife was pregnant with when we went for the last time as a family. So she says she counts that as being in Israel, and she says, "I was hiding." So that's always, the thing. Have you been to Israel and not? So they're planning on joining me this summer for the excavation, and we really look forward to being back there. We homeschool, so it's a great thing to have flexibility to be able to travel, for instance, for something like this. But also, there's always the possibility of living in Israel for months at a time, and so to have the flexibility to do that is always a good thing. I even teach a little bit Greek mythology to my oldest, and so that's got in a nutshell. My oldest likes basketball. We've started doing that, but that's more or less a summary.
Does he like Frisbee golf? Has he got there yet?
We
Has
played.
he been introduced to it? Because you can bring the inventor out there himself, and he can teach him.
That's right. That's right. I hate to say this. The last 2 times I played Frisbee golf, because I have a horrible underhand, so I throw overhand. I threw out my shoulder both times.
Ouch.
So I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to play
Frisbee golf.
anymore.
Watch out for that sport.
It's embarrassing, but that's what happened.
Good. Well, if you and the family, if you're not, planning a trip to Israel and you just are laid back and wanting to do something, what are some of the go-to things for you and your family to do?
Yeah, we hang out a lot with my parents that are nearby. They just added in a pool. We like Star Wars and Middle Earth. We love to read. I think we're on round number 2 or 3 through the Lord of the Rings as with my boys, and we love playing basketball and football in the front yard. And so we're pretty active in terms of that. We recently went skiing for the first time to Colorado. And so kind of your typical activities. We like hiking, but we live in a place where you can't hike. It's just walking. When we can get to places where there's some elevation, we do like to do that, and we do also like camping some. I should say, my wife likes camping some. Really, I go, and I'm learning to like it more and more. But we just really enjoy being together as a family in a lot of different environments, which you kind of have to if you homeschool. And so, tend to have a lot of different type of outdoor activities.
Good. Well, thank you for that, and thank you for just giving us this wealth of information and just all the time that you've spent here just this weekend. We greatly appreciate it here at Compass. But before we do conclude, one thing I always ask, and have asked of you as well, is just how can we be praying for you?
I have it up there on the screen. So I would say one of the first things is with young kids, you're always we're trying to lead them to the Lord, obviously, and we're there with them a lot of time, and it's always trying to know and let the Spirit lead on when to talk about it, when not to. And luckily, it comes up quite often in the types of literature we're reading, and we're always, of course, going to church at my church where I teach at. So it's all there, and I would love to see my oldest and my second oldest start to move towards genuine faith, and I think they've expressed that they believe, but baptism and that type of thing on their own, and trying to also know the balance between not pushing too hard while letting the Spirit move in their life. And so that's a big one, obviously. The second one has to do with Gesher Media. I'm so grateful that this company was started before I was there, and I really see it as God's providence that I've been connected with it. I went to this interview and didn't know them really from Adam, and started talking with them, and within a couple of days, I started working with them and really bought into what they're doing in trying to reach so many people with the stuff that I think is so important. So I would just would cherish the prayers of seeing that this is successful in 2 ways. One, that the content that we're putting together would be really good and useful, but also that we would find the right places to put it into, the right CEO, producer, whether that's Netflix, Discovery, whatever it is, that the Lord would lead that process. And the third thing is, I have a lot of projects that I'm working on, besides, the Gesher Media on script, and lots of writing deadlines that I've either ignored or say either get it in now or we're not going to publish it. Trying to manage some of those things and having the endurance to finish a lot of those things, which isn't necessarily a problem. I love doing that. It's just finding the time to fit it all in.
Well, great, and we will certainly be praying for those, and I'll start by concluding us in prayer, but let's give Dr. Chris McKinney a round of applause for being here. Thank you again for just sharing your heart with us and why you do it and your passion behind it. You can clearly see it, and again, as we've heard from many people this weekend, and that we'll have the final session tonight, they've greatly appreciated it, and we greatly appreciate you being here at Compass and taking your family out here and getting them to where they could hike. You could hike out here, so you could hike away. All right, well, let me pray to close us out, and then, if you got any questions or anything for Dr. McKinney, I'm sure he'll be around for a few minutes to take a few of them. So pray with me. God, we do just thank you once again for just blessing our church with just gifted leaders and people that are just just love your word and love the depths of it and love studying it and being able to provide ways for others that read the Bible and that sit under their teachings to have their minds illuminated, to understand your word more, Lord. And I just thank you for Dr. McKinney and all of the work that he's doing with geography and archaeology and these excavation projects. I know they're not easy things. I know they're not easy upon the family having to travel and for extended periods of time, Lord. But I just pray that you would just continue to watch over him, continue to give, as he just asked for, that endurance to work through these multiple and various projects that he's working on. We know it is for your glory, Lord, although it's something that he enjoys doing, Lord, at the end of the day, just hearing his heart and wanting to be able to provide something that people may know your word more. They will understand it better. They will be able to, bring it all together with the geography of where things are, with just reading the Bible. Lord, all of those things, I know that he is working on that and trying to help people with a better understanding. So, Lord, please give him endurance and steadfastness to continue to press on and continue to open up doors that he may do that. Lord, I pray for his family, Mindy and the kids as well, that you would allow them, Chris and Mindy, to be able to just continue to lead their kids well and continue to share the truth of the gospel with them and be a great example of a good godly man, a good godly woman, and what a marriage is and how they both love Christ. Lord, I pray that their kids would see it in their actions and even their words and their love for you, and that you would save them at an early age, Lord, so that they can be used to further your kingdom as well. And Lord, I do pray for this Gesher Media that Chris is working with as well, Lord, as they get ready to conclude this project. Lord, allow them to make this good. I pray that it would be fruitful, that it would be used well, and that they would find the right outlet to be able to produce it. Lord, that you would give them the perfect people that would put this out, that would have great relationships with them, and that would be able to spread this out and scale it amongst many people, that they may be edified by being able to listen and hear this project and watch it, and that they may grow in their knowledge of you. So we thank you again for Dr. McKinney. We thank you for just his time that he spent here at CBI over the weekend, Lord. And I just pray that all the students that are taking the class would walk away with just a more increased knowledge of you and a more eagerness to continue to learn this great work that you've gifted him with. So we just thank you for the time for this interview this morning, and pray that it was honoring to you. In Jesus' name, amen.